Welcome to today's lecture on ethics. From your readings, you might have gleaned that ethics is a branch of moral philosophy that traces its roots back to ancient thinkers like Aristotle and Epictetus. These philosophers and others were deeply concerned with the nature of goodness and how we determine what is right and what is wrong. Now, ethics and morality are often used interchangeably, but they have distinct meanings. Ethics involves a rational justification of actions when values conflict. For example, in journalism, there are ethical guidelines that determine how reporters should conduct themselves, such as respecting sources' confidentiality. On the other hand, morality pertains to beliefs about inherent goodness or badness. For example, an individual may feel that lying is inherently wrong based on their moral beliefs, regardless of the situation. Imagine you're faced with a choice. Do you tell your friend their new outfit isn't flattering? Or do you spare their feelings with a white lie? These everyday scenarios illustrate ethical dilemmas where conflicting values must be balanced through reasoned decision making. One philosopher, Philippa Foot, noted that ethical dilemmas involve determining what actions are morally right given the circumstances. Let's explore some textbook definitions. Henry Sidgwick described ethics as a systemization of perceptions of right conduct. R.A.P. Rogers viewed ethics as investigating principles determining the worth of human actions. Margaret Walker emphasized ethics as understanding or responsibilities in the service of values. But what exactly is the goal of ethics? According to Robert Audi, ethics seeks normative completeness, what we ought to do, and epistemic completeness, why we ought to do it. This dual focus aims to provide comprehensive moral guidance and justification for our moral judgments. The standards of ethics are certainly influenced by culture and ideology. In our globalized world, there is ongoing debate about the balance between individual autonomy and universal moral principles. For example, the COVID 19 pandemic led to widespread discussion about vaccine mandates, and as a result, different approaches were adopted by various countries and communities. In the United States, there is a strong cultural belief in individual freedom and autonomy. This belief resulted in resistance to vaccine mandates. Further, the ideological perspective of personal liberty emphasizes the right of individuals to make their own medical decisions without government interference. Contemporary ethicists discuss the challenge of relativism versus universal moral standards. Some argue for a focus on universal human solidarity over individualistic biases to address global ethical dilemmas. Aristotle, Immanuel Kant, and John Stuart Mill represent foundational figures in ethical philosophy, each contributing unique perspectives to the understanding of morality. In his Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle emphasized the cultivation of virtues, both moral and intellectual, as essential for achieving human flourishing. He proposed the doctrine of the mean, advocating for moderation between extremes to attain virtuous conduct. Kant's deontological ethics posited moral duties grounded in reason and the categorical imperative. He argued that ethical actions are determined by their adherence to universal maxims, emphasizing respect for human dignity and autonomy. Mill's utilitarianism prioritized the pursuit of happiness or pleasure as a basis for moral evaluation. He differentiated between higher and lower pleasures, advocating for actions that maximize overall happiness while respecting individual liberties. Transitioning to W.D. Ross and Rawls, these thinkers further expanded ethical discourse with their respective theories. Ross introduced institutionism, positing that humans possess intuitive awareness of moral truths. He identified prima facie duties, including fidelity, justice, and non harm, which guide moral decision making amidst conflicting moral obligations. Rawls, on the other hand, critiqued utilitarianism. He proposed justice as the primary goal of societal institutions. His original position and the veil of ignorance concept aimed to establish fair principles that prioritize equal basic liberties and benefit the least advantaged members of society. When we assess the ethicality of an action, we confront the question of whether we should primarily consider the intention behind the action or its actual consequences or both. This distinction is pivotal in ethical theory and practice. There are three things that must be considered when putting ethical decision making in practice. 1. Contextual considerations. The context of a situation often shapes how intent and consequence are weighed. For instance, in professional ethics, the intent behind a medical decision might be to save a patient's life. But if the consequence is harm due to negligence, the ethical assessment becomes complex. Number 2, ethical reasoning. Effective ethical decision making requires robust reasoning that integrates both intent and consequence. This involves evaluating the moral principles at stake, understanding the potential outcomes, and foreseeing the broader impact on one's actions. Number 3, personal and social impact. Individuals and societies differ in how they prioritize intent versus consequence based on their ethical ideologies and cultural norms. This diversity underscores the complexity of ethical reasoning and the need for thoughtful reflection in addressing moral dilemmas. To bring our discussion full circle, it's important to highlight that ethics is not just about knowing right from wrong. It's about navigating the complex terrain of conflicting values and justifying our actions in a reasoned and ethical manner. By understanding the distinctions between ethics and morality and grappling with ethical dilemmas, we gain insight into what it means to make morally responsible decisions in our everyday lives. Thank you.